I look at them and I'm surprised too. For example, I personally know the current Secretary General of NATO, Mr. Rutte. He is the former Prime Minister of the Netherlands. I once visited there and we talked. He's a smart person. I know this, he's smart, systematic, and effective. Exemplary, if you can say so, effective. The Dutch economy is in good shape. That's partly thanks to him. But what is he talking about? I really want to ask him that. Listen, why are you talking about a war with Russia?
Russian President Vladimir Putin has responded directly to NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte's recent comments about the need for Europe to prepare for war with Russia. Speaking at his annual press conference in Moscow, Putin questioned what he called the reckless rhetoric coming from NATO leadership. Putin's remarks were notable for their personal nature. He spoke of knowing Rutte personally, praised his intelligence and effectiveness as Netherlands Prime Minister, and then questioned why such a capable leader would be making what Putin characterized as unreasonable statements about war. Putin's comments came in response to statements made by Rutte on December 11th at a forum in Germany. According to reports, Rutte called on Europeans to prepare for a war similar to that experienced by their grandfathers and great-grandfathers, a reference to the world wars of the 20th century. This rhetoric represents a significant escalation in NATO's public messaging. While NATO has long maintained its defensive posture, explicit calls to prepare for war with Russia mark a notable shift in tone. Moscow has repeatedly stated, including in writing, according to Russian officials, that Russia has no intention of attacking NATO countries or the European Union. Putin's response began with what appeared to be genuine puzzlement, and he stated, "I, for example, am personally acquainted with the current NATO Secretary General, Mr. Rutte. He is the former Prime Minister of the Netherlands. I once went there for a visit and we had a good conversation." Putin described Rutte as a very intelligent man and praised his record as Prime Minister. He stated, "I know he was a smart, systematic, and truly effective Prime Minister. Yes, very effective. The economy of the Netherlands is currently in excellent condition, and that is certainly part of his significant achievements." This praise made Putin's subsequent criticism all the more pointed. After praising Rutte's intelligence and effectiveness, Putin expressed what he characterized as surprise at Rutte's current rhetoric. He stated, "But what on earth is he talking about now? I just want to ask, what are you saying about war with Russia?" Putin continued, "We need to prepare for war with Russia. They want to prepare for war with Russia." The question was posed as a direct challenge to Rutte's logic and reasoning.
This is because they are evidently attempting to comprehensively cover up their numerous and significant mistakes in various critical areas, including their foreign policy decisions, the overall state of the economy, financial management, and a multitude of other related issues.
Putin offered his own explanation for what he sees as aggressive rhetoric from European leaders. He stated, "Why is such a policy being carried out, such a reckless one? Because it is with this that they are trying to cover up their mistakes in the sphere of both foreign policy and economics and finance and so on and so forth. This is what I believe." According to Putin, European elites are using confrontation with Russia as a distraction from domestic policy failures. This interpretation frames the war rhetoric not as a genuine security concern, but as political strategy designed to deflect from economic and policy problems at home.
The European political elites supported the Democratic Party, Ms. Harris, in the US presidential election. They did this quite openly, not to say brazenly.
Putin then turned to what he characterized as European interference in American politics. He stated European political elites supported the Democratic Party, Ms. Harris, in the United States presidential elections. They did this quite frankly, if not outright brazenly. Putin drew a contrast with previous accusations against Russia. He stated, "They once accused Trump of Russia interfering in the elections, but nothing was ever confirmed. All the investigations in Congress led to absolutely nothing. There was no cooperation, no Russian interference whatsoever." He continued, "But Europe's political elites interfered, and they directly interfered. It was absolutely evident, clearly discernible, and unmistakably unconcealed." Putin offered what he presented as an explanation for current European behavior. He stated, "It seems to me that even now they're counting on the fact that after the midterm elections for the U.S. Congress next autumn, the political landscape will undergo some changes and their traditional allies will re-emerge, allowing them to apply more significant pressure on President Trump." According to Putin, this explains European leaders' current posture. He stated, "That is why they are behaving in such a manner. Pause awaiting shift in the political landscape of the United States. Pause as the congressional elections draw near. That's all." This framing suggests European leaders are not responding to genuine security threats, but are instead engaged in political calculation, waiting for American domestic politics to shift in their favor. Putin made what he presented as a factual argument about NATO's own strategic documents. He stated, "Can you even read? Read the new U.S. national security strategy. What does it say?" Putin continued, "The U.S., I'd like to point out, is a key NATO player. The U.S. is NATO's founder, its chief sponsor. All main funds come from the U.S. Both money, military technology, weapons, and ammunition, all of it comes from there. This is the foundation." He then made his central claim. In the new security strategy, NATO's national security strategy, Russia is not designated as an enemy, designated adversary, as a target, a direct and undeniable target. No. Putin's argument was that Rutte's rhetoric contradicts the official position of NATO's leading member.
Well, can you read or not? How can NATO be preparing for war with Russia if the main NATO country doesn't consider us an adversary or enemy?
Putin posed a direct rhetorical question to Rutte. He stated, and the NATO Secretary General, he's quite openly preparing us for a full-scale war, a direct confrontation. What in the world is this? He continued, "Well, can you even read? How can you possibly be aiming NATO at a war with Russia if the leading nation of NATO itself doesn't consider us an adversary or an enemy?" Putin characterized this as a fundamental contradiction in NATO's message. Putin concluded his remarks on Rutte with a direct criticism of his professional competence. He stated, "It's simply, I don't even know how to put it, the level of professional training for this role is inadequate." He continued, "You need to be attentive to your responsibilities and look around. This applies not only to the Secretary General, but also to many others of the Western leaders." This criticism went beyond policy disagreement to question whether Rutte and other Western leaders are qualified for their positions. Putin's remarks came in the context of Russia's repeated statements that it has no intention of attacking NATO countries. Moscow has stated, including in writing according to Russian officials, that Russia poses no threat to NATO member states or the European Union. From Russia's perspective, NATO's war rhetoric is not a response to genuine Russian aggression, but rather an attempt to justify military spending, distract from domestic problems, and maintain political pressure on Moscow. NATO and Western governments see the situation differently. They point to Russia's invasion of Ukraine as evidence that Moscow is willing to use military force to achieve its objectives, and argue that preparation and deterrence are necessary to prevent further. Putin's direct criticism of Rutte represents a significant moment in NATO-Russia relations. The personal nature of the attack, questioning Rutte's ability to read and his professional competence, suggests Moscow sees value in publicly challenging NATO leadership. Whether this rhetoric will affect the ongoing negotiations over Ukraine remains to be seen. As talks continue between U.S. and Russian envoys, the relationship between NATO and Moscow remains tense. Rutte and NATO have not publicly responded to Putin's specific criticisms as of the latest reports. The exchange highlights the deep divide between Russia and NATO over how to characterize the current security situation in Europe. NATO sees Russia as a threat requiring preparation and deterrence. Russia characterizes this as reckless warmongering designed to cover up Western failures. As both sides continue to state their positions, the risk of miscalculation remains. Whether the rhetoric from both sides will escalate further or give way to diplomatic engagement is a question that remains unanswered.